I see a finger pointing at my face. I think that means we are live. Hello, everybody. Once I get confirmation that people can hear me, we will get this show on the road. We can hear you, Yavor, Knights, Kings of Honor. We got lots of good friends in here. Welcome, everyone. We are on Devstream number 26 today. Back here in short order to talk to you about goods and advantages. I have my regular friend Alex. Not regular as in you're a regular friend, but like a regular. I'm not trying to. Yeah. As soon as I said that, I realized I made you sound like just normal, right? Like medium.
Sometimes it's best to stop explaining. It's okay.
Yeah. How are you doing, Alex?
Hi everyone. Well, I'm great. Spring has finally come in Bulgaria. It was a long winter, probably 5 months this time, so it feels great to have some sunshine here.
Yeah, I was able to. I think I was out there last in November, so I was right there at the beginning of the winter. But I've skipped over the winter months in Bulgaria, and I'm not sad about that.
Yeah,
was it like I want to say this was like 2 years ago or something? I came out there in April, and it was supposed to be warm, and when I get in, there's a snowstorm and it's freezing. So you never know.
Yeah, climate change. It's a real thing.
Yeah. So I was we were just talking before the thing. Hopefully everyone noticed, and I think people have because they're here. The fun period of these 2 weeks where the U.S. and Europe are not in the same time frame because of the differences in daylight savings time. So I think for you guys today it's an hour different, right? Because the times have been switched a little bit.
Since it will be switched after a few days in this weekend, so we are still good. Right
yeah,
now.
No, but I think for right now, this slot is a little bit earlier than normal for you.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock here. I think that usually we start at 6 o'clock, which is
yeah. But that one little weird couple weeks where like we're out of sync and everything is strange. But we have people showing up. I see Yavor is here, Ivory Knight's here, so I guess enough people saw the time difference. That's good to see. Well, we are.
Yeah.
So
I just check every time because due to that asynchronous changes, I'm always afraid that I will miss the Devstream with 1 hour.
Yeah, we actually had that happen once. I want to say, I'm sure some people were here when it happened. This was like, I don't know how long ago it was, but we had one Devstream where we didn't we didn't see. Wait, I'm getting a note that there's something going on with my audio and video. Oh, weird. I've had that happen once before. So is everyone seeing my... Alex, is your audio synced on your side? Are you seeing me talking in sync, or?
I see you just fine. Probably it's something from the streaming.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes Twitch has done that in the past to us, where there's a little bit of a delay. So hopefully they can... yeah, some people are saying it's fine, so... It could be a Twitch thing. I don't know. We'll do what we can to make it work. Yeah, yeah. So well, let's get started on the topic, and I guess if it's going out for some people that may be a Twitch thing. Um, Today we are talking about goods and advantages, which is kind of expanding on some topics that we've discussed in the past. So if you haven't read the Dev Diary is up on the community site, community.knightsofhonor.com. We have some good screenshots. We kind of go into the details here. But we're going to talk about goods first, and then we're going to bring the beard, Georgie the beard, on a little bit to talk about advantages, and then we'll come back and go through a number of questions and whatnot. There was actually quite a bit of discussion on this. And I keep on being surprised by that because every time it seems like the discussions keep on getting more interesting. But it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there was a lot of talking on this one.
Yeah, we always read them. They're pretty interesting this time also. It has happened in the past also. So I just accept it as something normal and something very, very nice.
Well, it's good to see what everyone thinks. I mean, we definitely are reading and paying attention to those when it comes to even how we're balancing things and iterating on things. So it's helpful to see if people's impressions of certain things are similar to ours or different. Obviously, we had our own first impressions when we had things implemented, so it's good to know. We also, I believe, have some new video we'll be showing throughout the stream today. So we took some new video footage from the advantages screen and picking advantages. I think Georgie had one video of winning with an advantage victory, so it's just gonna be B-roll in the background, but you'll get to see some new stuff. No battle stuff today, so all on advantages and goods. So I'm sorry, Yabor. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, and I guess let's talk about goods at the start, and then I know we've discussed them a little bit in the past, syncs to other things, but what are goods like in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign? What are goods?
They are indeed connected with the province features and the building. So what? This is one complete system. You cannot rule one of those and talk about the others. Goods are something that we use for several different conceptual things. For example, this can be raw materials. They can be some utilities, even instruments, and they can be. There's one special group of goods that are social classes. For example, like merchants and some clergy, scholars, and so on.
Yeah, I know that that was something that it can be a little bit unintuitive in the beginning, but they do have different. There are goods that are about unit progression, like how you build more higher tier units, or how you like for example horses. You have to have availability of horses in order to even build cavalry, and then heavy cavalry needs iron and other things. And there are some goods that are just part of the fantasy of playing Knights of Honor that tie into some of the metagame systems, like advantages and whatnot.
Every good has some usage in the game. First, they provide some minor bonuses on, for example, fame and gold, commerce, production, and so on. But they also either have some usage in a chain of buildings and upgrades, or they are used in advantages. And some of the goods, of course, have multiple uses. They can be used in several production chains, even in several advantages, some of them.
Yeah, Calliope is asking, and this kind of is tied to what we're talking about right now. He's asking how many province features there are. I'm not sure exactly which of my features, so I don't know how to answer that question exactly. Maybe if you can give a little more specifics on what you mean by that, and we'll try to take that question. But I actually think that's a really big part of the goods process, is trying to figure out how to unlock the ability to build certain upgrades or certain provinces themselves. I find even with like like say you're trying to do religion pumping and you really want to have a lot of religious power. Some of those higher tier buildings or upgrades take ink, and they take incense or access to different things, and so you have to kind of seek out how you're gonna get those different goods available so you can do that final building.
Religion is especially interesting example because for different religions you have different goods that play important role. For example, candles are not used in mosques; they are actually forbidden there, so they play no role that type of buildings, but they play important role for buildings that are for Christians, of course. Also for pagans, they are also used. It's indeed it depends. What are you trying to build, upgrade? What type of units do you want to produce? And if you have some goals that these are usually your short-term goals. If you know very well what you want to achieve, then you can check out and find all the goods that are needed for that chain you want to build.
Absolutely. I know that for me, I often I like to try to get medium to high end units earlier in the game, just so when I'm spending my resources and risking myself in combat, that the units I have are stronger than just the peasant armies. That really does kind of drive, okay, what can I get stables? Can I get iron? Can I get a weaponsmith going with the certain advantages so I can get those like heavy infantry instead of the light infantry or whatnot. That's a big part of me trying to figure out how to like plan my expansion or my trade relationships in the beginning. But there's also, I remember, and this has changed a little bit, but for a while, like for a good year or so, like barrels were like one of the most important goods that you needed for everything. And I remember like, oh man, I gotta find deep. Like whenever I'd start, it's like deep forest. I gotta find a deep forest and look that up. So that's changed a little bit. But I think players are gonna find certain things that they are gonna want earlier to match their playstyle, or they're gonna start and look around what they have around them, and that may change. Almost like resource allocations in games like Civ, it may change what you how you decide to orient your early game.
Yeah, deep forest is especially important because there are a lot of resources that are tied to the woodworking industry. But right now we have a lot of deep forests around the map. This is the most common province feature actually among the 24. Yeah, even more than coastal, I think. If you play in Africa, it's kind of problematic because there are no forests there, and usually,
you're right.
Yeah, if I start there, usually my first good that I'm trying to produce is camels, because the distances are very very big. All provinces are extremely large, and if you have camels and camel cavalry, it's a huge advantage. Much more important than cavalry in Europe.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that, but yeah, there's definitely part of that kind of interplay between your location and what some of those different goods can provide to both your military strength projection as well as just your ability to grow and kind of go up the chain. So, I mean, we're talking about this kind of puzzle aspect when it comes to building, units up or building out different types of resources to get building upgrades. Could you maybe walk, just so that everyone can get this in their head, maybe you can show an example or walk through what the layout is for a more complex upgrade, like what you have to build to get to a more complex upgrade?
Okay, let's take the royal armory for example, because I'm sure that the military aspect is will be very important for most players. You can play Knights of Honor without having particular trade goods, for example, or not having so much religion books and so on. But usually you need an army, so this is really important. And to get this, you need leather, and you also need iron. And let's do it top down, starting from here. To get iron, you need to have some iron veins somewhere. This is a province feature, iron ore. And to produce iron there, you also need to produce somewhere in your kingdom coal. Because if you don't have coal, you cannot build a blast furnace. Yeah. So this is the first element, and the second element sounds simpler, but it's actually sometimes trickier, because to produce leather, first you need either sheep or cattle, And also you need to have limestone, which is the trickier part, because limestone sometimes is hard to get, and you need actually lime solution, historically, to treat the leather, to harden it. It's used for the tanning process, and so you need woodworking for the coal. You need also iron ore. You need limestone, and finally you need either cattle or sheep. These are the 5 province features you need, and I think 5, 6, 7 goods that you need to produce to be able to make that building.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example of how, you know, you set a goal for yourself, and you're like, this is the upgrade of the building I want to go for, and it's going to take these things, and you start kind of playing the puzzle game. Okay, which ones do I have right now? Which ones are near me that I can acquire through, you know, conquest? Which ones are not going to be easy for me to acquire? So maybe I need to do diplomacy and try to get a trade relation build up that I can try to import it. You know, you have to kind of like put that plan in place, and I think it's part of the fun of figuring out that kind of that goal setting and how you can make it come together. And sometimes it's like, okay, I can't do this now, so I'm gonna have to wait until I can conquer something further away. Or sometimes it's like, all right, maybe I'm putting my army on a boat and doing something a little bit risky, trying to get a little satellite empire or something going on that has the resource that I'm looking for. And I think that's actually, even though, you know, our resources aren't necessarily tied directly to the ones that were historically in those provinces, because, you know, a lot of it's randomized, so the game is unique every time. It's accurate, I think. I mean, there's a lot of that going on in that. I mean, I guess still today, right? Like, you have resources that are going to be used to produce goods, and you got to find a way to get them in order to do that. And that's part of I think, the fantasy of playing this game that a lot of people enjoy.
Yeah, it's actually extremely interesting right now with the situation in Europe with supplies of metal and gas and so on. So yeah, it still remains the same. War for goods is it's always something pretty important. Actually, it's very interesting because you can there are, I think, two types of players. You are either try to make what you want, or you adapt and take the best of the situation and the randomness. Not so much doing your a strategy that you have thought through before the game, but when the game starts, you just see what's your best strategy for the kingdom you get, for the provinces you get.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you saw Calliope or Calliope's comment. He or she was saying, next goal, exploit iron in your realm and keep it to yourself without trading it, and deal with rebels, so you rule with an iron fist. I like it. It's part of the fun of these games, is like having your own little stories you tell around certain moments. So absolutely. Now we were talking a little bit about this, but I want to expand on it some. You know, conquest is obviously one motivator for finding goods, but the other motivator the other thing we're kind of talking about is trading. So if you want to get a good that maybe you don't want to try to conquer for, you know, what kind of ways can you go about it? How would you go about acquiring them from potentially a trade partner?
Oh, it's absolutely a valid strategy. You can import some goods. It's very hard to import a lot of goods because they require a lot of commerce and gold upkeep. And also it depends how.
Just to jump in right there, we've talked about this in a previous dev diary, but I want to remind everyone how this works. So when you're doing any kind of trade actions, there's this kind of a threshold type resource called commerce, and you get more commerce as you develop your kingdoms. But you can only say you have 30 commerce total. Each thing that you do in trade, like a baseline trade, may take up 10 commerce or whatever. You can't really go over your commerce total without having some pretty severe penalties. So it kind of limits. I mean, you can go build a whole bunch of commerce buildings and upgrades and try to pump that number up, but you have to be a little bit strategic about how many of these you want to actively trade for.
Commerce is something that for some of the actions you cannot exceed your current commerce. It's a kind of a upkeep value, and
Yeah, yeah,
for example, if we return to the master armory, royal armory that we talked about, it's quite cheaper, for example, to import just limestone than import directly leather, as well as it's cheaper to import coal instead directly iron. So the higher
okay.
you
So like
go
you're
up,
importing the lower good and then developing the. Okay, that makes sense.
and of course you have to maintain good relations with the kingdom that you rely on that import, because
You
if
wouldn't want to lose access to it.
if your commerce is broken, well then you just your buildings stop working that require that resource. So
Okay.
it's very
So
nasty.
so in an example, like, so if you can you go and ask a kingdom directly, hey, can you give me this resource, or is it an opportunity that comes up through your merchant? Like, how does that work when it comes out? Can you say, hey, I want coal? Do you have it? Can you send that as a request?
If you have trade agreement, you can import all the resources, all the goods that the kingdom produces. So you can check them out.
Oh,
They are available both through the merchant menus and through the political view. There are special filters that show you the production by kingdoms and by provinces of goods and province features and so on. So you can easily find where to import it, but still you have to sign and maintain trade agreement there, and to have sufficient commerce and goals to upkeep that import.
okay, cool. Yeah, I feel like that's there's that randomness that comes up in the merchant system where you have those opportunities, but it's good to know that if you want to go and try to pursue a particular resource, you can kind of aim for that.
Yes, there's an opportunity to get lucrative imports, which is more beneficial. You get some. You get lower cost and upkeep, so it's nice to have. It's an opportunity, but it's too evil to make you wait for an for an opportunity for something specific, because there are quite a lot of goods, and
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
you just may have no luck there. And this feature is on another level when you play multiplayer, because you can synchronize
Yeah,
the
right.
production between your teammates, and it's much less random, because with AIs you just have to wait someone who's friendly to produce it. But if you have a teammate, you can say, well, man, I'm making the iron, you're making the leather, and in 30 minutes we have both of us have armories. So
I mean, is it
it's
a?
nice.
I imagine it'd be complicated because the world is quite big. But is it a viable strategy to try to cut a certain resource off from somebody? Like, say you can't get access to a certain resource because you know all the trade partners don't like you because you're the other human is souring them against you, and he controls or she controls all access to that. Is that something you can do?
On a regional level, it's absolutely valid, and it's very hard to go and conquer a province that is very far away, and to protect it, especially early game. But on a global level, it depends on the resource type. If it's something very rare, you can do it, because some of the things are just some several places in the whole world. Some very rare. Yeah, for example. Well, it will be hard for me to say which is
No, it's okay.
the
I get what you
goat.
mean. Yeah.
Goat is very rare, for example. Usually, and if it's centered in several provinces that are nearby, you can probably try to make some monopoly. But it's quite hard to dominate a specific resource throughout the whole world.
Yeah, it's a big world. Well, let's go ahead and bring Georgie on. Alex, we'll have you back at the end to do through questions, but we're going to go through the other half of this equation, which we haven't really talked about yet at all. But another big part of this whole thing is the advantages system that ties in with goods. So we'll bring Georgie in here and go through some of that. Yeah, I know. I do. I have my energy drink right here. to keep me going. It's been a long week. I saw Yavor was commenting about he's tired but excited. I feel that way too. Tired but excited. So apologies if I was a little bit yawny there for a second. So let's bring Georgie in. And Georgie, there you are. How are you doing today?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. As Alex said, spring is coming, sun is shining, as if from the illustration behind me.
I'm gonna rat you out a little bit, Georgie. I think it's your fault that I yawned because you've been sitting there in a little corner. You're not on camera, so you're just like you're stretching and you're laughing, and then you this big yawn, and I'm like, oh my god, Georgie, stop! I just see it in the corner of my eye, and it's the whole thing with like all the even if you're not like in a yawning mood, it's like psychosomatic. Once you see someone yawn, it's hard not to yawn as well. So you got me.
All right, sorry for that. I may or may not have been doing that on purpose. You never know.
Georgie's sitting there just going, just trying to see if he can get me the man. Let's not make that a thing. I don't want that to become a thing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So great to have you in. How have you been? How's life treating you?
It's been going pretty well. Business as usual. Nothing extremely interesting. So just being happy to see all the comments and people talking about the features. Been exciting.
I like your background today. I don't think I've seen that one before on stream.
It is one of our new illustrations which you receive when you gain an advantage, actually. So if you complete an advantage, you gain this message with this illustration, with the king looking at his wonderful provinces that have an abundance of resources.
Look at this. You guys are getting a stream first and you didn't even know it. You're getting to see the images first time.
Yeah.
He's a very stoic-looking king in that shot, looking out over his beautiful kingdoms.
So yes, you can also see his advisor over there.
Oh no! You're his advisor. Don't do that. Just
all right.
Just sit right there. You're good. Yeah. All right. Well, we are talking about advantages now. So as you heard, Alex did a great job of walking us through all the goods. But a big part of goods as well is how it ties into this system called advantages. And people who are fans of Knights of Honor are going to be very familiar with how this works. It's very similar. There are some differences though here and there. So first off, what are advantages? Let's just kind of like start off with kind of explaining that to everybody.
Yeah, sure. So advantages, as you said, people who have played the original game will be very familiar with the concept. They are avenues of development for your kingdom. Each kingdom has 8 advantages that they can unlock by producing specific goods that are tied to these advantages. And once you get an advantage with all the goods that are required for it, you gain some effects. So this is kind of a system that it shows you how you progress throughout the game. You can, as you've mentioned already with Alex, you can focus your attention on specific goods, or you can either, alternatively, you can just go with the flow and see stuff getting unlocked over time. But each advantage has a unique twist to it, and it feels different. It can be unlocked in a different part of the game. So there is a pattern you kind of start to see once you have a few different playthroughs.
So what are the? I know there's 7 main common advantage categories. And I guess there's an 8th option that is based on your religion, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. So the 7 main ones we already mentioned in Devstream, in the Dev Diary are Abundance, Mercantilism, Masonry, Progress, Age of Discovery, Age of War, Age of Prosperity. Those are advantages that are available to every single kingdom. And the 8th one is more religious focused, religious culture books, stuff like that. And it has some differences for each religion. So, for example, Christian and Orthodox kingdoms have Age of Triumph, which is sorry, not Age of Triumph. I forget the name exactly. Let me check. It's Age of Enlightenment.
MTLP, good seeing you. Thanks for joining the stream. And yeah, Georgie is a true friend. He's always got your back. So I'm sure you appreciate. Have a good one. Thanks for joining the stream for the time that you're here. I think it's funny. I saw one of the comments on the Dev Diary was critiquing the advantage names like mercantilism or whatever. So we can't please everybody. But William Blake has some opinions about the different naming conventions of the advantages. I see Alex laughing here off camera.
It's still useful feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, it's useful feedback for sure. It's just funny how that stuff goes.
Yeah.
So each advantage is kind of like a collectibles list in a way. It's like a collection that you're trying to complete.
Yes, exactly. Just to briefly focus on the difference for the religious ones, because I didn't go over them exactly. So for the Christians, you have Age of Enlightenment. For the Muslims, you have Golden Age, and then for the pagans, you have Age of Triumph. And these have different effects, and also pagans have different requirements for goods, because
Okay.
some of the goods they can't produce because they don't have certain buildings, but they
Right.
can decide to get more luxurious resources like marble, wine, furs that can grant them different effects, and those are the differences. But yeah, this kind of shows like each advantages is a collection of goods that you might want to collect earlier on. So for example, you might have an advantage that you can complete, which is abundance, which is doable quite early on. It gives you population growth and kingdom happiness, and it contains resources that are not exactly that difficult to create early on. All you need to do is to have province features like deep forests, flax fields, stuff like that. But it's not really stuff that really goes down the development chain so much.
Yeah, I know the it's I think it's a balancing act between when you first start, you kind of feel it out on which ones you want to angle towards, because it's sometimes it's going to be easier to get those bonuses than others, and then you just kind of like go from there. I think that
Yeah.
so remind me, and I guess the audience, right? So how many they're kind of like punch cards in a way, because you have to like get enough to get a bonus.
Yeah.
How many goods do you need in a tree in order to unlock the first of the bonuses?
So if an adventure says it needs 8 goods, you need to collect all 8 goods to be able to unlock the effects. You don't have gradual effects unlocked. Instead, you just need to complete the entire package, and then you get all the bonuses from there.
Oh, it's a binary.
Yeah.
Okay. There was a version, I think, at one point in time where we actually had staggered, right? Whereas you got goods as you went, it would unlock different things. That was an old version, I'm guessing.
Yeah. We had a different iteration earlier on that it was literally tiered, and you unlock different. We call them ideas that you slotted into those advantages. We kind of played around that, and we decided it didn't really click with the flow. It was maybe a bit too complicated. It didn't really fit well, so we decided to make it a bit more simple and more familiar with the previous game.
Okay. So it really becomes kind of like a mid to late game kind of feature, because you're really getting these things as you're collecting enough goods to unlock one of them. I imagine getting all 8 in an advantage is a feat. It takes a little while.
It is a feature. It is a feat, definitely. And by the time you get the 8th one, I mean, obviously the effects of the last one are not going to be really important for you, because at that point you can claim victory. But there are interesting cases in which I can go in detail into one of them if you want to. For example, Wage
Yeah,
of
sure.
Prosperity, because it's a really interesting one. It's kind of it is kind of mid to late game, because it includes some resources that are not really easy to acclaim, but the effects really show off
Like which
it
one?
was like, for example, if you want to do fine clothing or boots, those require some goods that are not really easy to get, but you also get easy resources like fine cheese and wine and pastries, which only require stuff like salt and spices.
Okay.
But the effects are interesting because they really tie into that mid to late game aspect of the game. So you get espionage defense, and you get an increased cost of bribing your knights. So, for example, if you are playing in a late game that many kingdoms have a lot of spies, you gain more defense against enemy spies, which is more of a late game feature in the game. So if you gain that advantage, then you're going to be benefited for defense against espionage. And you also gain culture, power, and influence, which also play an interesting part. For example, if you want to go for the Emperor of the World victory, where influence really plays a big role for attaining those good agreements and making vassals and so on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know that when we were talking about espionage, that was a topic that came up a number of times from the audience, which is how do you defend against, how do you make your kingdom more protected against, a spy action, which in a way are kind of like super weapons at sometimes. So it's I can see that being part of your strategy, and or even in multiplayer. It's like, okay, if I'm going to deal with, these kind of things, I may want to angle towards that one a little bit more earlier on in the list as opposed to something later on. And that's it's helpful too, I think. And there's organic goal setting based on opportunity, and there also is kind of like goal setting based on your play style and what you're doing. It may be something where you're going to go do a whole bunch of espionage actions, which may result in people trying to counter attack you. So you're kind of preparing yourself for the onslaught, and then just going to town, and it's like, oh, I have all this defense, so you can't really fight back too much this way.
Absolutely, or you can plan stuff like if you're a naval kingdom, you have a lot of coastal neighbors. You might want to go for Age of Discovery, which grants you faster sailing speed. It gives you better attack values in battles and seas.
Yeah,
and that can be a strategy you can go for as well.
Yeah, so Calliope is asking a question about the different like the number of resources and trade goods. Yeah, I mean it's been a discussion about how many we should have. It's a balancing act though, because the game is also bigger, and we have more provinces. There's more kingdoms, and if you have more stuff in the world size wise, but not enough unique stuff in there to kind of also balance that size increase, it wouldn't feel very good, right? Like the map, I want to, and I'm trying to pull this out of my brain from a couple of years ago when we talked about how much bigger it is than Knights of Honor, but I think it's like 30% more provinces and kingdoms. So we really needed to scale up some of these things just to add a little more variety and depth into that experience because of just the way that things change in size. You're gonna have more kingdoms to do diplomacy with. You're gonna have more areas to conquer. The whole experience had to kind of match that scale increase. So that's part. I've never really found the additional number of goods too intimidating, but I think it's something we're gonna have to balance in tune as we go out there and start seeing how people play it. Do they have enough that they can wrap their head around? Or does it feel a bit overwhelming? Those are all really good feedback points that we'll react to both when the game launches as well as kind of any like focus testing or stuff we do beforehand. So
and it's
something we're very aware of when it comes to is it going to be the right fit when it comes to the numbers.
Absolutely, and it's also important to point out once again that not every good is used in an advantage. Not all 64 goods are used in advantages. So what you saw in the screenshots, only specific goods are required for certain advantages. For example, leather is not participating in any advantage, but it does unlock different buildings that produce the goods that you might need for different advantages. You need leather for shoemaking, and you need shoes for the advantage, but not leather.
Yeah, and another part to clarify there is you also don't have, there are some goods that are, this is just different subsets, but there are some goods that are specific to different religions. So if you're, playing pagans, for example, there are some goods that you won't even care about or have access to because they're not part of your play style. So there's different elements there that you may, even though they're there and you could go, I guess, get a province that supplied them, that may not be something that you care about because you're not building the more advanced religious buildings and they're not really part of what you're angling towards.
Yep.
Yeah. So it'll be it's something that we've definitely talked about. But I think right now the number actually works pretty well. Like it balances pretty well. It feels like there's a lot of different stuff that you can do and nice goal setting, especially with the size of the world. But we'll see how that goes. I saw that coming up in the dev diary responses as well. So I definitely understand the number at first. It's like, wow, that's 24 more than it was before. That seems like a lot. So
yeah, and also want to open a quick side note. The amount of goods it kind of plays nicely into the multiplayer aspect as well, because you have a game mode which is War for Goods, in which you need to collect certain amount of goods, and when you play with other people and you need to collect those 64, it's a really interesting puzzle to do on your, like as a team. As you saw in the screenshots, you have filters to see which ones, I'm not sure if we show the filters exactly, but you can see which ones you're producing, which ones your teammates are producing, which ones aren't being produced, and you can kind of narrow down what path you want to go to.
Yeah, that's a good segue into the next point. Another thing that we're actually working on some of this right now. What we call political view, but it really is the zoomed out map, which you've seen from time to time when during the footage. There's a number of different filters or states in political view that allow you to better get an idea of where things are, the lay of the land. One of them is resource availability, like which areas of the world have which resources, and we have a way that it works right now, and it's something we'll probably continue to polish, is to try to make it relatively straightforward to get a lay of the land, so to speak, like what's around you. We've also talked about even like making it easy to understand which kingdoms have developed which goods. So they actually have like if they have a deep forest, they've actually developed it to get barrels out of it. You can tell they have barrels. There's different, we're definitely trying to get a couple different visual ways that you can actually digest that. I mean, think kind of like those little, not exactly like this, but in like Civilization, where you have little icons showing up in those different hexes, you could tell which ones had iron or whatever. There are things that we're doing to try to optimize all of that.
Yeah. Someone was saying in the comments for that visibility, and it's really important what you say. Having the political view, having the extensive tooltips, which you can walk and go further into the tooltips, and once you hover on a good, you can see where it's produced, where you can produce it, and what building is required. All those things are kind of cohesively playing together, and we hope it should be enough to gain a orientation.
It also adds a decent amount of variety in the province development and kind of conquest gameplay too, because early on in the game's development cycle, a number of years ago, we had an issue where it felt like every province was the same. You had like your common buildings, and we had a number of goods that were out there, but not as much as we do now. And we also didn't have the depth in each of those goods developments, and so you kind of found. I remember early milestone feedback back and forth where we're like, man, I mean, I'm building the same buildings. I'm not really finding anything unique. And even though we have some randomness in the settlements, it's not really enough to drive, excitement when you get a new province. You're like, oh, wow, I can do this. That's not the case anymore. As you're going around and kind of getting a new province, usually you get kind of excited because there's a whole bunch of different goods out there and there's different opportunities to take advantage of them. And I'm, often when you're sitting there and trying to decide, okay, do I want to build some of the common stuff, or do I want to build a unique building for its bonuses for this province, or do I want to build a unique thing to get access to this good so then I can go to another province and develop that? You have that kind of excitement and interest, and I think a lot of it is tied to that scale that's out there and the fun of the puzzle, trying to figure out how you're going to put things together.
Yep. It's a good driving force, definitely.
Yeah, I know that I definitely, when I play, and I was playing as recently as a couple last week, it's part of that decision making process on, do I go for these bonuses earlier and potentially make that my goal, or am I going for more general goals like increasing my revenue or building up an army? Like, you're definitely making those decisions, because you may get a province where you're like, man, the good availability here is kind of cool, but those buildings are expensive. So do I want to like ramp, or do I want to get this now and try to like see where you go? And the last one I was playing, I had access to cavalry really early, like right away. And I was only a 3-province kingdom. And I'm like, man, I usually wouldn't really go for cavalry this early because it does take a couple of upgrades to get access to it, and they're a little more expensive. But I'm like, but I have it all right here, so maybe I'll pivot and skip some of the other units and go right for them. And that's kind of fun.
Many times your strategy changes drastically. You start off thinking you're going to play diplomatically and only use merchants, and then 3 kingdoms wage war on you, and you're like, oh, I need that iron definitely fast. I need those horses.
Yeah, right, for sure. Now, the other aspect of the advantages, which I think we've shown a couple images of this too, as we've been showing the different videos and clips. We talked about like the different ways you can win the game. The advantages play into one of the victory paths.
Yeah, it's one of the 2 main victory paths. The other one being the Emperor of the World voting process, which is based on fame, which you get by getting goods. So it kind of ties in there as well. The more goods you gain, the more fame you have, and the higher likelihood for you to be victorious during the Emperor of the World voting. But advantages are kind of a more straightforward approach because you have an exact set of goals. Those are the goods you need to produce, and when you produce them, you can just claim victory. Compared to the other victory by claiming Emperor of the World, which is kind of more nuanced. You have diplomacy going on around. It's a bit more tricky to perform at a glance at first.
Yeah, but it is also, I think, part of that whole thing that we were talking about with Alex earlier, which is that some of the goods that you may need could be tricky to get.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you get closer to victory, the AI is going to be aware of that. Or if you're playing multiplayer, your friends are going to be aware of that. So if you're trying to get one of those rare goods like gold, for example, and someone is mid to late game closed off access to that and you didn't plan for it, then you could get yourself into a situation. So there's a little bit of that kind of early, or I'd say like mid-game planning, we were like, all right, if I'm going to go for an advantages victory, which ones are going to be hard to get at the end? And maybe I want to do diplomacy now to get access to them or something. Like you can kind of like try to piece that together instead of trying to chase one at the very end and everyone just blocking your ability to get to it.
Yeah, usually going for the advantages victory, like gaining all goods, by the time you get those in, for example, if you're in a multiplayer session and you're playing a different minor victory condition, so for example, you're having to collect an X amount of gold or expand to that many provinces, chances are someone's gonna get that first before the advantages victory happens. Just because getting all the goods, as you said, is a bit difficult.
I got distracted, only heard of half of what you said because Beldroth TV just got the win for best comment of the stream. I wish we had an award to give out for that, but by the way, very, very clever, Beldroth TV. I love it. He said, "You talk of war and gold when it is our faith that matters," which is a quote from the cinematic trailer that released back when we announced the game. And I didn't.
Nice.
I was literally talking about war and gold right then and there, and he's just like,
nice.
Drop the reference. That was fantastic. You get quite the cool points for that. As far as Knights of Honor community cool points, man, Beldroth, you just got a ton of them. I love that. That's hilarious.
GG.
Yeah, GG indeed. We need to find. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, let's bring Alex back on here. And we will go through some questions. We got some questions during the stream. I think we've grabbed a couple of them. And yeah, literally 300 IQ. Are you sure that's not Disguised Toast out there? Pro player. So let's go through and go through some of our questions. And Alex, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you think of that Beldroth quote, huh? That's not too bad.
Good one.
Yeah. You know you're a true fan when. All right, so the first question we got, and by the way, we'd love for you guys to become, I think actually most of the people on this stream are probably already in the community, but community.knightsofhonor.com, it's a cool place to hang out. I see a lot of fun conversations taking place there, cool place to debate. So we'd love for you to join. We always post our dev diaries before the streams. You can always jump in and comment, and we do read all the comments, and we do leverage them a lot. You can hang out with Holm. He's on there too. Yeah, feel free to join the community site, and you'll have a chance to get your questions maybe read on the stream. We always try to grab questions from the community site first. So first up, Zaza was talking about the resources and the systems for Knights of Honor 1. Let's see, there's a question here. I like that. Oh, okay, right. So the question is, if I understand it right now, all the resources in the kingdom are put in a pool and can provide, and any province can make any good. So he's basically wanting to confirm that once you get access to something, it's globally available.
Well, it's not exactly like that. When you produce some goods, then you can use them in every building or upgrade everywhere in your kingdom that requires them. But for example, you cannot make glass, for example, in a province that does not have woodworking, because the glassworks is part of the woodworking building, and even if you have the requirements for it, which are minerals and timber, I think, you still cannot produce glassworks anywhere in your kingdom.
Yeah, I think the difference here to remember is there's a difference between resources and goods. Resources are a province feature that allows you to build and create and do certain things that can produce goods. A good is global. Once you have a good, it's available. It's a binary. You either have it or you don't. But the resources that are in provinces, those are not global. They're tied to a particular province. So if you have a salt mine and you can only produce the building that produces salt in that particular province. Yeah, once you get salt is available globally for any province to use for another building in the tree.
So hopefully that sausages.
Huh? Sorry?
For example, for sausages, we have that resource.
Yeah, there you go. Sausages.
is an important resource.
Yeah, especially I see my German friend in production team, the producer Alex smiling in the background. He's a big fan of bratwurst and sausages. So, Zerg asked a question that I thought was interesting because this kind of implied something. There was a Zerg picked up that on one of the images, cannons, or in the text, cannons was there, and it says cannons is a produced good. So can we safely assume that there will be a gunpowder based unit? Yeah, good job. So I actually don't think we have any gunpowder based unit, really.
No, we don't. Gunpowder units, no, but you can have ships that when you... It's a visual effect when they fight at sea. You can see like small clouds of smoke and going out.
In that period, gunpowder was just starting to have some military purpose in Europe, and they initially used it for cannons, which were first only in castles and then on ships. But it took some time to be able to make some even most basic rifles, flintlocks, and so on. Probably somewhere in the future we might have some gunpowder units, but it will not be. It will be quite a stretch if we put them for the same period that we right now have in the game.
I know that's the fantasy that people are fans of this game really going after. They want to enjoy that kind of sword and shield era. That's part of the fun of it. So, but I found it amusing that was the question that got picked up pretty much right away from the diary. So William Blake had a lot of different comments and questions, and it was a really good conversation back and forth there. I know that every night who's here, he was also talking with him about some of the different comments he had. So thank you for all that feedback. It's great to see and read. There was one, and we kind of answered this, but I'm going to say it again just because I want to make sure I cover the way that William Blake said it. So his question was, he's talking about the goods availability. He says, so it sounds as if suddenly you can build glassworks in other provinces which don't have the natural resource. So if I build glassworks in other provinces, but I later lose the province with natural resources to the glassworks, what will happen with all the other glassworks I've built? He's a little bit confused, so I think we've clarified that in the stream, but he's kind of taking 2 or 3 different concepts and blending them together. I'm going to remind for the first half, and then I'll throw the question to Alex for the second half. The first half is that, remember, there's a difference between resources and goods. We talked about that before. Resources are local, goods are global, as more of a binary. But the other part of this question is access to a good. Resources is again, they're province locks. If you lose that province, you're going to lose that resource. But a good that's produced, in a sense, like we were talking about with Georgie earlier on with the trade. If I have, say, a building that requires a good in order to work, and I lose access to that good, what happens?
Georgie, take this one before you start yawning again.
Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, as you said, goods are global. So their effects are for all the buildings you have or upgrades that you have that require that good. So if you lose access to that good, those upgrades, those buildings basically stall, and they would work once again once you reattain access to that good.
So if you had, like, in your example, the Royal Armory, and there was a good needed to get that unlocked, and you lost access to that good, the Royal Armory's benefits would go away.
Yeah, it would stop functioning until you gain that good back.
Yeah. So it is kind of it's kind of a locked mechanism in a way, because even if you're able to build and construct, you can't just construct the building and then cancel the trade because you had the good to produce it. That would then turn off the advantages of that building. So you need to maintain access to the source goods all the way up to the...
Yeah.
And it can be a daisy chain effect, because if you lose one that's lower down, then it shuts down stuff all the way up the chain. That can be quite devastating.
Definitely. And once you're a more advanced player, you can kind of deal those precise blows to other players and waft with evil laughter, But it's really once it happens, it's a big hit if you've relied on a good for many buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's an interesting advanced strategy when you're like, I know this guy is producing these units, and I'm looking at the political view, and he only has one access to that good. That means that has to be the place that this good is being produced. So if I just go and hit that one province and take it down, then he's not going to have that good anymore. Or even in like a diplomatic situation, if you're closer to an ally that is providing that good to him, and you go and knock that ally out or take that one province the ally has, it has a cascading effect on both groups. So there's some like deep supply chain aspects to that you can start figuring out once you get a little more advanced.
Yep.
Yeah, super first. I mean, that's exactly it, right? Like, I don't think it'd be a complete collapse per se, but you can really hurt someone's systems by removing that key. It's almost like a house of cards, right? If you can find that right one to pluck underneath, especially in mid to late game, where say it's like advanced military units, and you remove something lower on the supply chain that makes it where they can't actually build heavy infantry anymore. Then all of a sudden, if that one army they have is the only army that's going to have heavy infantry, they can't build more. It can make a big difference. Let's see if I can grab a couple questions from the stream. Oh, ironically, this ties to a question that Templar Knight 633 asked earlier. Can spies spoil a country's trade flow? Like, is there a way a spy could infiltrate a kingdom and either destroy that kingdom's trade relations with another kingdom, or maybe even siphon off or steal some trade goods? So I don't think we can do siphoning, but I guess you could certainly do things when it comes to interrupting access to a good by poisoning the relationship between the two kingdoms.
Yeah, there are some indirect methods that you can, for example, try to even provoke war between the two kingdoms, or at least ruin their relations so that they stop trading. And merchants, if you have a merchant in a kingdom, you can use your connections and shun foreign merchants, which can be quite nasty. And also you can try to force independence of a certain province of your enemy, so that he loses the important production there.
Yeah, and you can also just murder a merchant who imports a good.
Sorry, I saw Rule in the Drop just stuck in the chat. He's been quiet, maybe lurking. All of a sudden, he does the whole like, "Hey everybody," emote. That's great. Good to see you, Ruin, as always. So what were you saying, Georgie?
I was saying that you can also even decide to murder a merchant for some reason, and he might be importing something. It's a bit of a stretch because you might not know what he's importing, but still, it could help.
Right, they have multiple merchants. Interesting. Yeah, that's it. There's layers there, which is what the whole game is about. We've talked about this throughout development, and one of the reasons why, and I know everyone's always asking about release date and everything. Why it's a complicated question, because so many of these things are so intertwined that pulling on any one thread can impact everything, and we're still iterating on stuff to make it, as tight and as fun as we can. So even as, you're watching the videos and seeing us whenever we show gameplay, and you're like, man, the game looks done. And it's like, well, it doesn't take much for us to add quite a bit of work into evaluating a change because of how interconnected everything is and how long the games can take. Like we've said before, we want to get the best version of Knights of Honor 2 out there that we can. So it's a process for that. And I think as you're hearing how some of these things are interconnected as we go deeper into the details on topics like goods and advantages, I think it becomes very clear quickly where it's like, wow, espionage can influence good access, which then can change how military stuff could work, which could it's all intertwined. Let's see. H for Havoc. Oh, by the way, Havoc, I missed you earlier. Good to see you. I'm not sure if you're still around. I was asking, is coal relatively commonplace? And I think there's a hidden other question there. What are the goods that are more needed for like core things like unit production? Are they more common than other ones?
Barrels. Yeah, there are some fundamental goods indeed. For example, barrels, salt, almost everything in the woodworking district. Iron is used on quite a few places, I think. Silver, it can have some religious purposes, some governmental and trade also. There are quite a few goods that are definitely more important than others. So we are not trying to making them to make them equal, by no means. But this is usually reflected by their rarity and the price you pay for importing and upkeeping.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be something that we continually tune and balance. We've already tuned it a lot. Like Alex is saying, I used to be infinitely frustrated about deep forests, and I know I mentioned that one specifically because barrels for a while felt hard to come by, but they were super important, and that's changed. It's gotten easier. I think we're going to find that happening a number of times throughout the polish phase, as well as when we get into post-release support. Tuning some of those values to make sure that the right accessibility for important goods balances out with the fun factor. Because it is also fun to want to chase something, so you don't always want them too easily available. Because that does play into the game mechanics there. I'm going to try to grab one or two more quick questions before we close out that are easy. Kings of Honor says, what's your least favorite trade good? Alex, do you have a least favorite?
It's a hard question. Probably it's the stuff that's pretty hard to get because it's also very expensive and very few kingdoms produce it, and I have to maintain always good relations with them. For example, gold is one of those resources. Woldstone also. If you don't have it nearby, it's just kind of painful to acquire it.
Yeah. What about you, Georgie?
I'm not sure. For me personally, it's weird, but I think it's camos because usually I play with kingdoms that are not in those areas where camos are produced, and it's most of the end game for me is just going to conquest down there and taking the camos or importing them before that, but I usually just take them down.
Yeah, I gotta admit, for me, and it's not true anymore, but honestly, barrels. I freaking hate barrels because I can't tell you how many times I was playing and blocked for hours and hours about not being able to freaking find deep forests with barrels. I remember a couple games specifically where there were no, and I remember I actually think I sent a note to Veso when it happened. I'm like, here's my map, and the nearest deep forest is like half a world away. What am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? And obviously we fixed it, but sometimes those pains, they don't go away. You don't heal.
Like the mercenaries.
Yeah, like, right, yeah. I don't think Robin and Yannick are on here, but like the famous mercenary destruction of 2000 and whatever it was, 2019 or 20 or whatever it was. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, and Goats too. Thank you so much for joining the stream today. We hope you had a good time. This is a really fun topic. There's a lot to go through here, and it's very multi-layered. So hope you had a fun deep dive in getting into that. Alex and Georgie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you too. Thank you, everybody,
for having us.
Yep. Producer Alex in the background, thanks again for all your great work. Everyone, you guys have a great, safe. Until next time, we'll be back in a number of weeks, 4 or 5 weeks that we usually are, and keep going. Release date, I already talked about that a couple times. So yeah, we don't have anything to say on that point quite yet, but we're getting closer. Things are going on, and we appreciate all your enthusiasm. Join the community, keep the conversation going, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.